bit of different scouting patterns, but really the middle of the map is what really sets it apart for me. You've got those 2 gold bases up on the high ground. It creates a lot of these kind of wide chokes. Really a lot of opportunity for flanking for Zerg players. You can use those Zelnaga Zelnaga towers to get yourself some really, really fantastic map control in this game, as they cover the only way to get to your opponent's base by ground. So really could affect the Zerg vs Terran matchup as opposed to Zelnaga Caverns, where you have a little bit more of those wide open spaces. It depends on which point in the map you're going to. But it's also a lot more kind of straightforward. There aren't those back doors in your natural. It's a little bit differently laid out in terms of mineral orientation towards the side of the wall at the naturals. So it's a little bit hard to drop the naturals in Metalopolis, for example. Are you all set to go on the next game?
I am pretty much good to go again. Metalopolis, Lin versus Dimaga. Dimaga last game, I'm just still completely blown away that he actually has figured out a way to make Mass Infestor work in Zerg versus Terran without actually getting killed. Of course, Lin did try to go for the macro game there, and he volunteered to go in a macro game versus Dimaga, so I have to wonder if he's actually familiar with the death machine that is Dimaga. Of course, Dimaga was in the GSL World Championship, so maybe these two players actually did meet each other while they were in Korea. But with that, I've got this game loaded up. So why don't we get it rolling in 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so morphing in at the 12 o'clock position, we have Dimaga as our red Zerg. And at the 3 o'clock position, we have Lin playing on the account name Bless as our blue Terran.
Yeah, so again, the map is Metalopolis. What do I think, as I completely cut you off there by accident? My apologies, good sir.
That's quite all right. I was going to ask, what do you think about these spawns and how they're going to affect the ZVT matchup as opposed to if you had, for example, cross-position spawns on this map?
Well, one of the first things to point out is these players are operating under the assumption that they can spawn in the close ground position, so that does change the matchup a little bit, as those spawns do open up some of those early timings, and that's something that Lin is going to have to keep in mind when he sends out his scout. Of course, Dimaga is going to see where Lin spawns immediately as they're in the close-by-air positions, and well, with these close-by-air positions, it does mean that either one of these players is going to have a pretty easy time dropping one another. As we can see, there's very small amounts of distance for them to cover. Metavacs or Overlords of Ventral Sacs complete are going to be able to clear that distance and get into your opponent's main base very, very quickly. Next important thing to point out.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We actually just see this refinery going down for Lin. I just had to point this out because he hasn't even built a barracks yet. Do you think we might be seeing some really early Banshee play going on here?
I wouldn't say really early Banshee play. It's definitely possible, but I might be leaning for a really quick factory and some kind of play coming out of that. Just because we've seen Banshees kind of slip away as in this matchup a little bit more recently, but again, still too early to tell and definitely not completely out of the question. Cloak Banshees, I would say, very good in this matchup, and considering I'm not sure if Lin actually caught when the layer timing that Dimaga was or went for last game, but it was a little bit on the later side. So
yeah, I know he did not. He was not able to scout that layer. He sent a scouting SCV, was unable to see it, so still playing under that same blind play. He hasn't even sent a scouting SCV to find out where his opponent is spawning, actually. So, I mean, could just be fast teching up to Blue Flame Hellion and just using that for some early map control and harass. But I'm still kind of shocked that he hasn't even sent an SCV to his opponent's base to find out where he is.
Yeah, so interesting thing to notice that he's cut Marines, and the reason he did that was so that he can slam down that reactor as soon as he got that 50 gas. So I do think now that we might be seeing some Hellion pressure coming out of Lin right now. Still hasn't added on a second refinery or anything like that. And if he was going to be going for Banshees, I would have expected him to do that by now, or at least a really, really quick Banshee timing. And he's now going to be able to scout it out, as I think he's caught wind of the fact that there's an Overlord nearby, as there is an Overlord just hanging out right here. And he's going to get a decent amount of scouting information. He's going to see that Dimaga already has a gas. There's 2 Zerglings out, 4 Zerglings as well. He's throwing down a Spine Crawler here at the natural expansion. And has sees both of these hatcheries kind of jiggling about, as there are no queens on the field right now. So I'm sure he can establish that those are queens coming out of those hatcheries. Zerglings right now moving out to get some scouting information and take control of the Zelnaga towers. And a pair of Hellions are being constructed right now from the Terran player. He's actually lowered his ramp. And Dimaga has an opportunity to run by. Will he catch it? No, the people actually gets raised in time. And now this Zergling is running for dear life as there are some Hellions out on the field. And immediately another Spine Crawler going to go down here at the back of the mineral line. And 4 more Zerglings on the way, as well as a nicely positioned Queen here. It's going to be pretty hard for these early Hellions to do too much damage here. I'll have to see how Dimaga is able to defend. Very nice positioning.
Yeah, great hold position on that Queen. Interestingly enough, after getting those 2 Hellions, he actually immediately lifted... I think he's just using these for scouting, to be honest. Put on a tiny amount of pressure, but he immediately lifted off that factory and moved it over to that Barracks' tech lab, so he's going to be going for that blue flame a little bit earlier. Oh, looks like we did have a pause there. But going for that really quick expansion yet again. He just used those 2 Hellions, put on a tiny amount of pressure, get some scouting, find out what's going on. Make sure he's in the clear and drop down the command center, which should be done pretty soon. I'm assuming he is going to be morphing that into an orbital command before lifting it yet again.
Yeah, so not able to take out any drones there. And with his Blue Flame Hellion coming up, he's going to be able to apply a little bit more pressure. He's also going to be adding on another factory. So it looks like Lin is going to be focusing mostly on that mech-oriented play. And some more Zerglings running out on the field. They do have speed complete right now. Really just wants to apply as much pressure to Lin as possible and keep Lin in the state of mind that there's always units outside his base and he needs to be a little bit more careful. So just so that Lin isn't able to completely run rampant. And meanwhile, and see that strategy is already really starting to shine as Dimaga's supply count's already quite higher than Lin's, as he's not been able to secure this natural expansion until right about now. And yes, like you were saying, third factory on the way right now. So still no siege tanks or siege mode being started. And considering that he's going to be going up against the Spire, which might mean Mutalisks, he's going to need something other than Hellions to deal with that.
Well, he did drop down an armory right now at his mineral line, so perhaps we'll see some Thors coming out this game.
It's not out of the question. Transferring some SCVs right now to the natural expansion. He's finally going to be able to have his economy start to catch up to that of Dimaga, who's only 10 supply ahead of him. He's been able to start closing that gap a little bit. But Dimaga is saving minerals and gas so that he can get a pretty large amount of Mutalisks out on the field right now. Once that Spire actually completes, this is a tactic that Zerg players have been doing since Brood War. So no, Dimaga isn't a total noob. He's not stockpiling money because he's bad at macro. He's doing this for a reason. As soon as this Spire finishes, I predict that we're going to see about 6 or 7 Mutalisks start immediately. 5. Only 5. Okay.
He is supply blocked right now, so that's got to be the reason.
A lot of Blue Flame Hellions right now coming into the natural expansion. Excellent Queen here on the whole position once again. Pulling drones off the line. Oh! Nice hit there from those Hellions. Not a lot of units to actually take care of those Hellions, but good Queen positioning is going to be able to take out a few more of those Hellions before they're actually able to do some damage. They will get into the main base, continue roasting down those drones, and Mutalisks are now out on the field. Lin was able to take out 16 drones there. Is Dimaga going to be able to return the favor with these Mutalisks and their harassment capability?
Well, we do already have a Thor in play with another 2 on the way. So, I mean, it looks like he's going to try to go for these SCVs, though. He's just going to abuse the mobility of the Thor, just go back and forth between the 2 bases. Definitely a great move on this map with the natural and main so close together, but with that ramp off to the side. Oh, no, he does stack them up. They took quite a bit of damage from that Thor there. But still, he's just being as annoying as possible, taking out a bunch of these SCVs and getting himself a nice little economic advantage through this harass, trying to come back from how much he fell behind from that Hellion harass.
Yeah, and Lin realizing that he's held off that attack, those 5 Mutalisks there, he's going to launch another Blue Flame Hellion attack here in the natural expansion. This time only able to kill off 1 more drone. Dimaga now realizes that he's going to be going up against Thors. He needs to get some roaches out on the field, so he does throw down that roach warren. He's also sneaking a 3rd base down here at the 9 o'clock natural. And this is actually a really intelligent play since Lin is actually blocking an expansion from going down here at where you would normally expect the Zerg player to go for his third base, especially in these positions. Mutalisks are going to kill off that Hellion, and now he's going to go for what would actually be his fourth expansion. But again, Lin has not caught wind of the fact that this hatchery is here, so he's operating under the assumption that he's going to be going up against the 3-base Zerg, whereas it's actually going to be 4.
Yeah, and I love that, that positioning of that secret hatchery, because it's basically off in the side of the map where you're never going to see Lin going. He's never going to send dropships all the way around there unless he's going for that third. So it's a lot better than placing it somewhere like obviously the gold, or even the 9 o'clock main. I feel like would be easier to find out. Meanwhile, Lin is putting down a couple turrets around his base, just trying to stay a little bit defensive here. He does have Thors positioned around pretty much everywhere. And he has dropped that command center, so he is just going to look for going into this super late game macro yet again, and getting this, or not super late game, but go into this macro game with 3 base. But like you said, he's operating under that assumption that Zerg player is only going on to his third as well right now, so he's going to fall pretty far behind if he doesn't scout that hidden base.
Oh, and these Blue Flame Hellions right now trying to look around for expansions and get some map control, and Dimaga is doing the same thing with these Mutalisks and is going to catch those Hellions down there on the ground, picks off a few of them and sends them back on their way. So by positioning these Mutalisks here, and on this side of the map, he's again denied scouting of this secret hidden third base here, which he's currently adding on some defenses, as he's got 2 spine crawlers here, and taking both of the extractors. He's researching pathogen glands. Glial reconstitution just about to finish. Missile attacks is being researched, as well as carapace, and 5 infestors on the way right now, as well as 5 roaches. So Dimaga kicking his macro into high gear, really wants to gear up for the mid and late game stages of this game, and really just start shutting down Lin. Lin right now looking like he's going to set up a planetary fortress here at the gold expansion and really start locking down the rest of the map behind him, using these siege tanks and this very long-ranged army. Not quite mobile, but it can control a lot of space, and that's really what he wants to be doing in these kind of positions, given the strategy that he's been setting up for himself this whole game. So really interesting play coming out of both of these players so far.
Yeah, what's really cool is that when Lin sent out those 2 Hellions just to kind of do another tiny little bit of harassment at Dimaga's natural, he did scout that Roach Warren. He saw the timing on that, and he started making that transition into tanks, completely cut off his Thor production after he got 4. Switched over into those tanks, and now he's starting to pump upgrades on his armies, although he does have double army, not upgrading from the second one. So a little bit of a misstep there for him, although Dimaga doing the same thing, double Evo chamber in his main with neither one. There we go, double upgrades now being upgraded, researched rather, for Dimaga. Going to have 2-2 relatively soon, but Lin is already at 1-1 for his mechs, so I mean, in pretty much the same position right now. No one's got that upgrade advantage that they're going to want, but Dimaga might be able to pull ahead here if Lin doesn't remember to get that second armory upgraded.
The fungal growth going down on a few of those Hellions. The rest of them going to be taken out by those roaches, and still Lin hasn't spotted the hatchery here, but given that there's so much creep spread, he might have been able to catch one. More Blue Flame Hellions making their way into the natural expansion and main base. A lot of drones getting taken out right now. As we can see, the drone count for Dimaga fall very quickly. He's doing a lot of damage with that attack. Drone count now down to 54 for Dimaga, and considering he's on 4 bases, that's not a lot of drones. If we take a look at the workers kill tab, we can see that 41 drones have died this game, and if those 41 drones are still on the field, then Dimaga would be maxing. He'd have 100 drones. He would have an absolutely insane economy. I don't think he would have actually made 100 drones and kept them all alive at the same time. Now that I think about it.
I mean, Lin's doing a great job keeping Dimaga on his toes here. I think before that harassment, Dimaga was up by something like 20 harvesters. And look at that. He just, created an entire set of drones out of all of his larvae. Now, yet again, he's already up by 15 harvesters again. So, I mean, if Lin doesn't keep up this pressure, he is just going to fall way too far behind. It is 4 base coming on to 5 base versus this 3 base. Although, of course, Lin does have the gold expansion, and we all know how absolutely fantastic mules are on the gold.
Yeah, if we take a look at the income tab right now, we can see Dimaga just marginally ahead of Lin as far as mineral income. He's still got a lot more gas to work with, and that is allowing him to go for more gas-heavy armies. We see that he's got a ton of infestors and mutalisks already out on the field. Hive Tech just about to be completed. It's about 6.5 minutes later than he went for in the last game, but still a pretty decent Hive timing nonetheless. And it's immediately going to start morphing that Greater Spire, as we can see right now, and that does signify that we might be seeing Broodlords in the near future. Burrow being researched as well as Tunneling Claws, so these Roaches can clear the distance between all of these siege tanks rather than trying to run the gauntlet. And just all around really solid play coming from the Zerg now is going to continue harassing with these Mutalisks. Meanwhile, these Blue Flame Hellions are going to try and make their way into this expansion, but the Roaches are going to be able to catch them off in time. One of the Hellions tries, just barely manages to make their way into the mineral line, but gets picked off by that Spine Crawler. More Blue Flame Hellions going for the main base, but getting shut down once again. Excellent defense by Dimaga.
Yeah, throwing down fungals on Blue Flame Hellions all over the place. 9 o'clock base. Also just lost, I think, like 6 Hellions. So, you know, Lin not doing so great at this point. Dimaga's starting to really catch on and do a really good job of defending against all this harassment. And Lin's in a pretty tough position right now. He's trying to get this 4th up. But these Mutalisks are just continuing to harass. And Lin, unfortunately, is not doing quite as good of a job at defending against this harassment as Dimaga was doing for Lin's harassment. But it looks like Lin might just be deciding to go for the push. He's just moving his entire army up here, down the front, above his gold base. I don't know if this is such a good idea, though. He's only at 2-1 upgrades right now. Dimaga at 2-2.
Level 2 just finished for Lin. So that might be the timing he was looking for.
Oh, yeah, true.
But if he's going to go...
Lin does have a bigger army, but, I mean, Dimaga will be able to recreate his army almost instantaneously as soon as Lin destroys it. I mean, he's got 5k, 3k banked up, and he's maxed, essentially, so... I don't know if this is such a good idea, overextending out here like this. I mean, it might be a good idea just to be able to take that 4th and not have too much aggression. Yeah, but if he gets too aggressive and goes for the kill, it can be really bad.
He's really just putting Dimaga in a position where Dimaga has to make a play here. And it looks like his play is to throw down a ton of Spine Crawlers here on the high ground and start morphing, that's not even a word. Morphing those Broodlords and trying to track them down and not having any luck whatsoever. And he's going to have to get those Broodlords in the correct position pretty quickly here, as Lin is now attacking into this natural expansion. Here come the Hellions trying to make their way into that expansion down at the bottom once again, but Dimaga was moving to attack that as well. And Lin, realizing that he's going to have to go up against Broodlords in the near future here, has already added Vikings to his army composition. He did make those before those Broodlords actually came out on the field. I'm still struggling to actually find them. Where are the Broodlords? Nice, Fungaros are going to go down.
Right above the Greater Spire. They're coming out right now towards the tanks, raining down tons of damage. Friendly fire being done as well from those tanks.
Yeah.
Oh my god, he does not have Vikings in position, taking way too much damage from these Broodlords at this time. Only 2 Vikings fighting off these 4 Broodlords, doing ridiculous damage. Roach is running in the front. He is forced to fall back, as that was a bit of a mistake with all those tanks set up there in the back. I mean, Broodlord's taking damage from these Vikings and Thor, but just completely ignoring it and taking out the tank count. And I think that's a really great move. I mean, Dimaga can easily recreate these, no problem. And he's transfusing them with the Queens, which is just absolutely beautiful play, keeping them alive so long versus only those 2 Vikings. And now Lin has lost a ridiculous number of his tanks. He still has about 8 left near his gold base, but that entire amount of pressure was just completely decimated. And now Dimaga is 50 foot ahead of his opponent, and he's still got 6k, 5k banked while, you know, Lin is almost broke. So Lin in a really bad position right now. Dimaga just going for the kill, running those Roaches in straight past the siege tanks. Infestors do get targeted down, get destroyed. These Roaches are going to get killed off, but they do burrow. There goes the scan, so gonna be taken out pretty easily. Might have been a little bit of a misstep by Dimaga there, just moving those out into all those siege tanks, but still in an excellent position. He can recreate his army very quickly here.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Dimaga really wasn't doing anything but watching those Roaches there at the bottom in the last engagement. Some siege tanks in siege mode over here on one side, and unsiege tanks there on the other to deal a little bit more damage. And now Dimaga's going to kick his macro into gear, as there are 20 Roaches on the way, 8 Infestors, and 17 Corruptors. He's still got plenty of money to make a ton of Broodlords here. And these eggs might actually get taken out, and that would be pretty huge considering how much stuff is there. A lot of eggs going down there right there, or cocoons I should say.
That's just
here come the Infestors on the high ground.
We do have a fungal going down there, but I don't understand. Dimaga's macro really just fell apart there. He was sitting at about 110 food while he was microing those roaches for almost an entire minute before he actually started macroing out those eggs. So now he's in a really bad position.
14 Broodlords. 14 Broodlords. All he has to do is hold on this one last time, and he's going to have a big enough economy, enough Broodlords on the field, and enough Corruptors on the way as well. 17 Corruptors. If he can hold on just a few seconds longer, then he will be okay. He can even let this Hive die out. Still has a remainder of these tech structures still operational. The Broodlords have popped, and they're immediately going to start taking out these Siege Tanks. Not enough Vikings here to take out this many Broodlords. These Siege Tanks are going to evaporate very, very quickly, and Lyn is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, these Broodlords are absolutely destroying every single Siege Tank that's on the field. This Viking completely useless against all these Corruptors that are going to come out. Lyn had himself a nice little time window there, but I think he kind of got a little over-aggressive. Maybe should have gone for one of the expansions instead of just for the main. Surely had to know that Dimaga was going to be able to rebuild extremely quickly with all those bases. He knows he's been on 5 bases this entire time. Now he's just going to use these Broodlords to attack this gold expansion, which unfortunately actually doesn't even have any minerals left, but this positioning would be very good if not for that. Unfortunately, it is not going to be able to do much of anything since there's no mining going on there anyways. Yeah, however, there is a counterattack going up from Lyn at the 9 o'clock base right now.
Yeah, those Blue Flame Hellions are actually going to kill a lot of drones right now. They're getting there on the high ground. Almost enough Blue Flame Hellions to actually beat these roaches. You can see them getting taken out very quickly, but if you just take a look at the mini-map, it is raining Broodlings here at the Gold Expansion. It is going to be no match. Lyn realizing he's practically in a base trade situation at this point, trying to buy himself enough time to get his Viking count up high enough so that he can deal with this air army out of Dimaga. He's got 13 Vikings on the field right now. He's pumping out from 3 at a time. And Dimaga is going to be able to take out the remainder of the Hellions here, but not after losing all of the drones. But the air onslaught is going to continue here. A lot of Thors, a lot of Vikings, but a lot of Corruptors and Broodlords as well. And this is going to be a pretty crucial engagement. Whoever comes out on top of this is going to take the game. Corruptors are all stacked up, and those swords are going to do a ton of damage, but the Broodlords are going to take them out very quickly. Corruptors continuing to chase down the Vikings, keeping them away from the Broodlords, while the Broodlords take out the remainder of the forces on the ground. Dimaga doing an excellent job here, and those Vikings are falling very quickly. It does not look like Lyn is going to be able to hold on for very much longer.
Yeah, I can't help but feel like Dimaga was almost... I mean, obviously he wasn't, messing with his opponent, but it seemed like he was playing around at the end of that game. I mean, he just kind of was like, all right, I'm going to suicide my entire army and send all my roaches into you so I can free up all the supply and then make like 1 billion Broodlords. So, I mean, that kind of a play, it is extremely strong, but it seems like he did it because he was in such a commanding lead at that point and just really wanted to seal the game that way.
Yeah, well, it worked, and I mean, at that particular point in time, when you have that much money, to throw away on things like Corruptors and Broodlords, you put the Terran into a position where his only option is to spam anti-air, and after taking out his entire army, you can essentially put the Terran player into a position that he simply cannot win by making that many units of that type at that particular point in time. That's exactly what Dimaga did, even though he kind of dabbled around it a little bit there, microing like 3 or 4 roaches against some siege tanks with that burrow, rather than actually macroing about the 40 larvae that he had to work with there. But nonetheless, it worked out, and Dimaga is going to be able to take the series 2-0. And with that, we're going to go into our next match, and that is going to be I Am Nest T versus Love CD. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.